Okay, you guys, it's been a minute. I apologize. Um, Life has been lifing. Um, Good and bad. I mean, there's been a balance. Um, I am excited to announce that I had a news outlet in the UK reach out to cover my story, my brother's story. Words cannot express how proud of myself I am and how grateful I am for all of you that have been supporting me through this. I'm trying not to tear up. It's been a crazy journey. And, I feel like I've been struggling because I know I told you guys that a lot of this stuff is information that I'm finding out in real time. So I need to give myself grace and myself time to process things. And sitting down, and writing sometimes can get pretty heavy. I apologize for the sirens. So when I'm already in a space where I feel like I'm processing to sit down and really like pour my heart out on the page, sometimes adds insult to injury, if that makes sense. All of this to say, I've been thinking about my journey and where I want to end up and what I'm doing and where I'm going. And I'm remembering why I'm doing this, right? Healing through trauma, talking about things that need to be talked about. And with that, I think that in the near future, we might have a pivot. And I don't know what that pivot's going to look like yet. But just fair warning, we might have some changes. Changes that we should be excited about. Changes that kind of allow me to get deep into things and express more of my personality versus me just reading off of a page. Or maybe a combination of the two. I don't know where I'm going yet. But, it's a journey. And a journey that I'm blessed to be on and a journey that I'm blessed to have you guys on with me. So, let's talk about this episode. In this episode, we kind of get into me getting into my first toxic relationship. And this is where the tea might be hot for you guys, because if you know, you know. Okay? And if you don't, you don't. But some of you might know. Some of you might not know. Either or, though, you're in for a story. So, yeah, we get into just kind of, me navigating life as a teenage girl and so on. A lot to unpack here. A lot of things I think that I want to debrief about at the end. But without further ado, let's get into it. Living with my mom wasn't always terrible. There were moments where she made me feel seen, moments where I remembered that love existed, even if it was buried under the layers of pain and confusion and choices I'll never understand. I loved her, despite everything. I clung to that love like it was a lifeline. Even when I was furious, even when I hated what she was doing, hated what she was allowing, I still loved her. Still looked up to her. I think part of me always did. Maybe it's because I didn't have her for so long. 4 years. 4 years without my mother. 4 years as a child aching for softness, for safety, for someone to just show up. I had a mother technically. But when your connection exists only through prison glass and crackling landline calls, it's not the same. It's not enough. So when she came back, when I had her physically near me again, I told myself, Allegra, be grateful. Allegra, at least you have her now. At least she's here. But the truth is, I didn't. She wasn't mine to have. She was Emery's. And even then, she was barely present. Her body was there, yes. But her spirit, her fire, her clarity, all of it had been slowly, methodically stripped away by him. I watched it happen. I watched her dissolve into someone else. Someone who didn't know where she ended and where he began. And that is a feeling I know all too well. Because I've lived it, unfortunately more than once. And because I've lived it, I understand her in a way I wish I didn't. The empath in me wants to reach out, take her hand and whisper, I get it. I know what it's like to forget yourself for a man who convinces you that survival means silence. I know what it's like to think that maybe this is all you deserve. That maybe this is love. And I want to tell her, you're worth more. There's a life outside of him. There's a version of you untouched by this. There's a love that doesn't hurt. But then the mother in me kicks in. And the mother in me doesn't understand. The mother in me doesn't want to understand. The mother in me is furious. Because how? How could you? How could you let a man walk into your home and raise his hands to your children? Children he didn't help create. Children he had no duty to, not by blood, not by law, not by anything except common human decency. And these weren't just children. These were special needs children. Vulnerable, innocent, trusting. How do you not intervene? How do you not grab them, hold them, protect them with your life? How do you let it go on? How do you look away? How do you stay? How fucking could you stay? I wrestle with that every day because on one hand, I've been her. And on the other, I can never be her. That's the paradox. Because I've lived it, I have empathy. But because I've lived it, I lacked empathy too. That's the paradox. Because I've lived it, I have empathy. But because I've lived it, I lack empathy too. It's a mess. A tangled web of love and betrayal and grief and trauma that I still haven't fully unraveled. It's the noise in my head at night. It's the ache in my chest when I think about the child that I was. The girl who just wanted her mom. The girl who thought love meant tolerating pain. The girl who buried her own voice to protect the very people who broke her. This episode, I want to take you back to her, to me, to 14-year-old Allegra. I want to show you the world she lived in, the choices she had to make, the battles she fought silently, the scars she carried then and still carries now. Because to understand me today, you have to meet the girl that I used to be. So let me take you there. I was just a girl. Literally. 14 years old, still half child, half woman, carrying more weight than I ever should have had to, but wearing it like a second skin. And I hid it well. You'd be surprised how well pain can perform. So many of you have told me I would have never known. And part of me is proud of that. Proud that I didn't let my trauma leak into every hallway I walked through, every classroom I sat in, every sleepover or schoolyard conversation. I looked whole, I looked loud, I looked okay. But beneath all that, I was aching, drowning quietly. At 14, all I really wanted was to be wanted, to be chosen, to feel like I mattered, like I belonged somewhere, anywhere. I had a big personality. And if you knew me back then, you probably remember it. Loud, wild, always laughing, always going, always on. But that's what no one saw. That big personality, it was just a scream in disguise. A scream that said, no one sees me at home. No one hears me. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to fit. And eventually I did. I found a group of friends who became my escape hatch. They pulled me away from the phone calls with my mom that I wasn't supposed to hear. The adult responsibilities I had no business carrying. The silence in my room. The chaos of that house. The emptiness that always met me at the door. They became my safe space. Or what I thought was safe. And I ran to them every chance I got. Every weekend, every late night, every after school moment I could stretch just a little longer. And then there was him. A boy just a little outside the circle, but close enough that our worlds kept overlapping. We'll call him Blake. For a time, Blake became my Emery. The one I thought saw me. The one who made me feel held, if only for a moment. The friend group I'd attached myself to wasn't exactly heavy on structure. No shade, just facts. Most of us were floating, figuring out life in houses that had little to no adult supervision. And if the parents were around, they were the cool ones, the ones that let us smoke, drink, have boys over as long as the door stayed cracked and the lies sounded convincing. It was a free-for-all. And for a girl like me, free from it all. A girl desperate for freedom, for affection, for anything outside of her home life. It was the perfect storm. They became my family, my replacement family. And Blake, he became my safe space. At least that's what I believed. We talked for hours on the phone, texted all day like we were breathing through each other's words. He became my diary with a heartbeat. I'd cry to him, confide in him, let him see parts of me I didn't show anyone else. He cared about me, or so I thought. And he had his own shit too, his own wounds, his own ghosts. We bonded over the heaviness. Two teenagers trauma dancing through a world that kept trying to crush us. He would tell me things he had survived, and I never made him feel small for it. Never made him feel weak. I loved that he trusted me, because I knew how rare that was. And in return, he gave me what I'd been starving for. Safety. At least I believed it was safety. It was the first time I'd ever felt that with a boy. The first time I let my guard down. And piece by piece, I handed him parts of me I didn't even know I was giving away. Because when you've never felt safe, the first person who offers you shelter feels like home, even if they're not. And I caught feelings. Of course I did. I grew to need him, to feel tethered to him, and he knew that. He saw it. And eventually he used it. What started as emotional safety turned into emotional leverage. He knew exactly how to unbuild what he helped create. But that's the thing about trauma bonds. They don't feel toxic at first. They feel like salvation, like someone finally gets it. We weren't healing together, we were hiding together. From our realities, from our pain, from everything we didn't want to face alone. But hiding isn't healing. And Blake wasn't a boy who saved me. He was a boy who mirrored my brokenness back to me. And that's where it all started to unravel. I'm going to take you deeper into that unraveling, into the mess, the illusion, and the heartbreak of thinking someone's your lifeline when they're really just a reflection of your pain. Because before I could grow into the woman that I am today, I had to survive the girl who thought pain was proof of love. Blake and I became inseparable. At the time, it felt like something out of a love story. Messy, dramatic, but magnetic. And I thought that meant it was real. But now, looking back with a clearer head and older eyes, I see it for what it truly was. Codependency. We weren't growing together. We were tangled. Twisted up in each other's damage, clinging to the illusion of closeness because it was easier than facing our own loneliness. He knew I had feelings for him. He knew. Instead of giving clarity or distance, he kept me on the edge. Close enough to feel wanted, but never close enough to be chosen. He dangled the idea of a relationship in front of me like a prize I hadn't earned yet. Leading me on just enough to keep me loyal. Just enough to keep me fighting for a spot in his life that he never intended to give me fully. He made sure I knew he was free. Free to flirt. Free to mess around. Free to do him. But me, I was supposed to sit there in the best friend role. Grateful for scraps. Grateful for stolen moments and blurry boundaries. And I convinced myself that if I just waited long enough, if I kept proving myself, if I played my part perfectly, he'd finally choose me. Finally love me the way that I was begging to be loved. And he did. Of course he did. But not because he saw my worth. Not because he valued me. He chose me because I had already proven that he could do anything. Lie, disappear, disrespect me, and I would still be there. Because by then I was hooked. He had me emotionally addicted. I had wrapped my identity around his, and he knew it. This is my first real experience with a toxic relationship. And I know some of you are confused, but Allegra, didn't you say you had a boyfriend at 16? Yeah, I did. But Blake wasn't just a boy I dated. He was a boy I would have dropped anyone for without hesitation. He was the one that I kept going back to. He'd messed up, I tried to leave, and like clockwork, he'd come back. With his tired apologies, his soft voice, his promises dipped in just enough sweetness to pull me back in. And I'd run back. Full sprint. Every single time. Because I wasn't just attached, I was addicted. Addicted to him like a drug I didn't know how to quit. And then came the moment I could never undo. The moment I gave him my innocence. I was 14, my brain fogged by fantasy, desperation, and this deep aching belief that giving him my body would finally make him choose me. Finally make him love me. Isn't it scary that a 15-year-old boy is just as good at manipulation as a grown man? He wasn't even my boyfriend, but he convinced me. We're so close, it should be me. You can trust me, this will bring us closer. And I believed him because I wanted to. So I said yes. On top of a dryer, in someone's basement. Not in love, not in safety, not in the arms of someone who cherished me. I remember the cold of the metal against my back. I remember the dim light bulb swinging above us, the hum of the washer beside us, the muffled voices upstairs. Like the world was carrying on, completely unaware that I was losing something I could never get back. And when it was over, I sat there in silence, pulling my jeans back on, looking down at my hands, feeling this overwhelming wave of regret crash over me. What the fuck did I just do? I didn't feel closer to him. I didn't feel held. I felt empty. Like I had just given away another piece of myself. Another piece for him to use. Another string to tie me closer. To trap me tighter in a connection that was never safe to begin with. Even after that, I still had to convince him to be with me. Still had to fight for a place in his heart. Still had to argue my worth. I was literally pitching myself like a job interview. Listing out all the reasons I make a good girlfriend, trying to sell him on the idea of loving me. It's pathetic, I know. But when you've never been loved properly, you'll beg for it in places where love doesn't even live. Eventually, he gave in. But not because he saw me. Not because he finally woke up and realized I was worth it. He caved because he knew that he could. Because I had already proven that I would stay. That I would worship him no matter what. That he could drag me through the mud again and again, and I would still be standing there, looking up at him like he hung the fucking moon. And that's not love. That's survival disguised as devotion. And I didn't know it then, but that moment changed everything. Blake and I's on and off again relationship followed us into every phase of growing up like a shadow we couldn't shake. The older we got, the tighter the trauma bond pulled, the deeper the toxicity rooted itself. What started as emotional confusion morphed into full-blown manipulation and control, and I stayed. Name any toxic situation you can think of in a relationship, I endured it. Lying, cheating, beating, gaslighting, isolation, emotional abuse, so subtle it felt like love until it didn't. It was a cycle. The same sick loop. I catch him with someone, we fight, break up, I try to move on, he begged for me back. Sometimes crying, sometimes angry, but always desperate. And I'd return every single time. He'd love bomb me, feed me lines like nobody knows you like I do. You think anyone else is going to love you like I love you? And the scariest part is, I believed him. Because by then, normal relationships felt boring. Too calm, too steady. Too safe. I had become comfortable in the chaos, addicted to it. To the high highs and the low lows, the breakups and the makeup. I confused the adrenaline for passion. I confused the pain for love. I found myself craving his attention in the aftermath of him hurting me, because that was the only thing that really got his attention when I was broken, bleeding, begging. He crossed every boundary I ever set, every single one. And I still came when he called, every damn time. By this point, I was about 16. My world had gotten smaller. There was this girl I had become extremely close to. We'll call her Kayla. When I say close, I mean sister close. Her dad called me his adopted daughter. We did everything together. She was one of the only people who felt like home during that time. Damaged like me, but honest about it. With Kayla, I didn't have to fake the light. She understood my darkness, and she carried her own. We found safety in each other's brokenness. She was protective of me, fiercely. By this time, I already distanced myself from my old friend group, mostly because my entire identity had become wrapped around Blake. He didn't want me around other people. He didn't want me to have space, didn't want me to have anyone around who might hold a mirror up to his behavior or worse, wake me up. And I let him isolate me. I let him make my world smaller until he was the only person in it. But in one of our many breakups, I started spending all my time with Kayla. She quickly became my everything. The way only teenage girls become soul-tied. She hated Blake, despised him. She'd go off constantly. He's not good for you. You need to cut him off. He's never going to change. And I'd sit there, defensive and torn, trying to explain to her that she didn't understand. We had history, that he was trying. But eventually, she started dating Blake's best friend. And suddenly, everything shifted. I begged her, please just squash the drama. Let me make my own choices. We can all hang out together. It'll be fun, I swear. And after a lot of convincing, she gave in. Just like that, the four of us became a little group. We spent every night we could at her boyfriend's house. His parents didn't care what we did. We could smoke, drink, blast music, hook up, and stay until the sun came up. Nobody asked questions. Nobody checked in. Nobody cared. It became our playground. A place where nothing was off limits. And at first felt like freedom. But then I started noticing something. Something off. Blake and Kayla. Two people who used to hate each other so bad that I had to beg them to be in the same room. Suddenly seemed close. Too close. Not just we're in a group together close. Not just we squashed the beef close. There were glances, inside jokes, touches that lingered a second too long. The kind of energy you feel before you ever see it. And my gut started whispering, even before my brain could catch up, something's wrong. Okay, so let's do a little debrief. There's so many things I feel like to unpack in this episode specifically because it really speaks to what you see as a child comes back full force in your development. And I was doing some research about like the stages of development of your brain, and when you're 5 years old and you see XYZ, like how it affects your brain development. And actually, I will read it to you. Okay, so when you're a child and you experience witnessing abuse of people close to you, at 5 years old, at age 5, your brain is still under construction, especially the parts that regulate your emotion, memory, safety, and identity. So there's 3 parts of your brain that are affected by this area, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, so please don't come for me, but the amygdala, which is hyperactive from fear. It learns to be on high alert, scanning for danger and 24/7. Hippocampus, struggling with processing memory, especially traumatic memory. Your brain might blur timelines, but it stores the fear. Prefrontal cortex, barely developed. This part helps with reasoning, decision-making, and emotional regulation. So when you see violence, your brain cannot make sense of it. It just absorbs it and reacts. When a 5-year-old's in survival mode, they don't process what's happening like an adult. They feel it, absorb it, and it shapes the way they understand the world. So all of this to say that, like, when you see somebody who's in a toxic relationship and, like, your first instinct is to be like, well, they should just leave, that is so unproductive. Like, it's like, there's a reason why somebody is accepting of that form of love, whether it's because of something that they were shown in their childhood or because of something they lack within themselves. So to offer up the you obviously like it because you're staying, like, narrative is, like, literally cooked. Like, there's science behind it. So, like, let's dive deeper. Because here's the thing, and before I dive deeper, I just want to say, because look, now I'm, like, sitting up. I'm like, okay, we're about to get serious. I by no means am getting on this platform and saying that I'm not accountable for my actions in life, because I am. I've hurt people because I was a hurt person. I have made less than stellar choices. But I don't think people understand how hard it is to have to literally rewire your brain after seeing things transpire for so long. And obviously living in an abusive household when Emery was in the home played a part of it, but another large part of it was watching my mom be in this relationship for 20 years. So I would get myself into situations like the one that I've touched on with Blake, which that in the next episode we'll dive deeper into that and how that transpires, because that's not even the climax of that story. Buckle up for the next episode. But though that was my choice, 14 through ultimately 18 is when our relationship ended. I was a child that should have had a parent there to guide me, a child that should have had a parent present enough to see the situation for what it was and get me out of it, because she was in it herself. She probably either couldn't see it or, who knows? I don't know. But it's an important conversation to have, because at the end of the day, though you are responsible for your actions and choices, a lot of the times people are who they are for a reason. We've all gone through things. We've all seen things. And there's scientific backing. Like, it's not just like, oh, I saw it, so I recreated it. It's like, no, your brain is hardwired, right, at that point to, like I said in my writings, chaos is comfortable. People would rather be comfortable in chaos than step outside of the chaos and essentially pursue a healthy relationship, because although consciously you're feeling this is wrong, or consciously you're feeling this is toxic, subconsciously it feels like home. Subconsciously it feels like this is normal. Like, for me to be living in fight or flight in this relationship with Blake was normal for me, right? To be begging him to love me properly is the same way that I was begging my mother to love me properly, in the same way that she was begging Emery to love her properly. Like, it's a cycle. So it feels normal. I feel like, what? I'm not supposed to have to beg this person to love me. And although, like, consciously I'm like, this doesn't feel right, subconsciously it feels like home. It feels normal. I'm supposed to be doing this. This is all I've ever known, all I've ever seen. So the just leave, or the you obviously liked it because you stayed in it, like, feedback that people like to give so often is so not productive, because at the end of the day, it takes a lot of work and a lot of self-awareness to step back and be like, okay, why am I choosing people like this? Why am I putting myself in a position to have to tell somebody how to love me properly? And you become addicted to the highs and lows. Like I said, I was 14 through 18, and the attention that I would get after he cheated, or the attention that I would get after he'd throw something at me, or the attention that I would get after he was mean to me was such a high. Made me feel so loved, even though moments prior he was treating me like shit. And there's scientific backing around that as well. Like, they say that a toxic relationship releases the same hormones as like a heroin addiction. Because your brain gets so used to the highs and lows and high and lows to the point of where you start like looking for it. If things are like normal for a while, you start being on alert of like, okay, like when's the next thing gonna happen? You're almost excited for it. Like, yay, when is he gonna fuck up so I can get the attention again? Like, which is so sick and so sad. But when you're in it, that's really how it is. And if you've been in it, you understand. And if you've been in it, I'm sorry you've been in it. But for me to get to this point of even being able to pinpoint these behaviors and speak on it the way that I am, I'm proud of myself. And if you know me, you know. I mean, up in, like, listen, I look back at certain things that I've tolerated or done, and I'm like, oh, like, girl, like, what were you on? Like, you deserve the world. All the love that you have to give. You deserve somebody who is in a space to receive it, and you deserve somebody who's in a space to reciprocate it. And so do all of you. And I want to make that very clear. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter what you've allowed in the past. It doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't. And listen, I'm getting on a tangent now. I need to finish reading my research to you guys. But that is something that in my personal experience, a narcissist loves to say, well, you tolerated it with this person, so I'm doing you better than them, and it's a problem. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is saying anything even remotely close to that, leave them. Because for your partner to want anything less than you wanting and being better, wanting better for yourself and being better, that's not the person for you. So you're telling me that because I tolerated worse with this person, I should accept bullshit from you? Absolutely not. And you know, there's a lot of people out there that are in a relationship with somebody who doesn't deserve them. And I would love to empower you guys to leave them. Like, for real, leave them. And, like, I know it's easier said than done, but, like, I need you guys to understand that at the end of the day, like, you choose your life outcome, you choose your life partner. I don't care if you have kids with the person. I don't care if you guys have been together for 10 years. If you see these toxic tendencies in them, if you constantly feel yourself craving more love, more attention, if they don't value you, if they are dismissive of the, like, come on, if they're not a partner, just go. And that's the thing, like, far too often you see, and I know it happens, you know, with men as well sometimes, but we're going to talk about with women. Far too often it happens with women that, like, when you go through an abusive relationship, like myself, the next one seems amazing, right? Because he's not hitting me, or he's not calling me out my name. Right, but he's still controlling you. Or right, but everything falls on you. He's not contributing. Like, it's like you don't have to tolerate the minimum because the person before them did less. And I feel like far too often we experience someone shitty and we encounter somebody less shitty. So we're like, okay, yeah, this one's a good one. And 9 times out of 10, it don't be a good one. So I want to challenge you guys to look at the situation and really ask yourself, am I getting what I deserve here? Is this a partnership? Am I feeling love and safety from this person? And if the answer is no, you have your whole life ahead of you. I don't care if you're 18 or 55. You don't have to settle. But back on how abuse affects the development of your brain. Seeing a parent be abused breaks a sense of security. So at 5, a parent who is supposed to be your protector, your constant, when someone hurts them, especially a man or the partner who's often viewed as the protector figure, it teaches your brain that love is unsafe. Safety can disappear at any moment. And that if your parent cannot be protected, then no one can protect you. And then if you grew up in a household where you had to hear your siblings be abused, it can create helplessness. It can activate survival's guilt. Why couldn't I help? It wires your brain to associate connection with pain. And then to grow up and be scared in your own home. Your nervous system gets stuck in survival mode, fight or flight, freeze, fawn. You struggle with trust, attachment, and emotional regulation later in life. You may over-adapt, become hyper-independent, overly responsible, or emotionally shut down. You might become hyper-vigilant, reading people's moods before they even speak because your brain had to learn how to detect danger. I want to talk about that, so we'll put a pin right there. But this is how it can affect you later in life. So relationship difficulties. You may tolerate toxic behavior because your brain equates inability, or I'm sorry, you may tolerate toxic behavior because your brain equates instability with love. Low self-worth. You're never made to feel valuable or safe. That becomes your baseline. Disassociation. As a child, your brain learns to check out to survive. As an adult, that can turn into zoning out, emotional numbness, or feeling detached from your own life. Caretaker roles. If you try to protect your mom or your siblings, you may grow up being the rescue in every relationship, having big sister syndrome, putting others' needs before your own. And I would say I'm affected by all of that. Like, I was like reading this like, wow, now you clocked me. But I want to talk about the over adapting and becoming hyper independent, overly responsible, emotionally shut down. And I want to talk about becoming over vigilant, reading people's moods before they even speak. I talk about that with my friend all the time. How I have this like sense of being very, very, very. I'm sorry. Now I slammed the computer. So that was dramatic. My apologies. But I have this thing where I'm very, very, very conscious of people's moods and energy. And I think about it like in my relationships where I'm always like, what's wrong? Are you okay? Because I can feel it. Even if it's something that they don't want to talk about because it's small, they don't want to talk about it, I could feel it. And that's something that comes from trauma. Like, I feel like I'm always conscious of people's every move. I overanalyze everything. I overthink anything. Like, I'm definitely the are you mad at me type of girl. Like, because if I sense even this much is off, like, I'm going to ask you about it because it like literally gives me anxiety. Like, I'll be tweaking out about it, like literally, like to the point of where I'm making myself sick. And that definitely stems from growing up in, a traumatic household. And people will argue like, well, like, or you were only in an abusive home for a couple of years, but I just read to you what that does to your brain. And it didn't stop there. She stayed for 20 years. So all of this to say, like I said, I know that I'm accountable to my own choices, and so are you. But we're talking about brain development. And I just read to you what happens to your brain at 5 years old when you are witnessing things that I witnessed. And in speaking on how I ended up in such a toxic situation so young, directly correlates to what I saw and how it affects my brain at 5 years old, the age that I was when it happened. And that didn't even touch on like the loss of a sibling, etc. So all of this to say that I am trying to create a space for people who have experienced similar traumas, or maybe not even similar, just trauma in general, that are trying to be conscious of why you are the way that you are and do better. And it's conversations that I feel like aren't had often enough with women, and especially not with men, because that's a whole other topic. Me being who I am and being a woman and being in therapy, and women are just, I would go as far as to say that women are more in tune with their emotions. And, there's not this stigma around expressing ourselves, or, you know what I'm saying, versus with men. And that is why there are so many men out there that are narcissists, and not to say women can't be, because they can, but that's why there are so many men, because I just explained to you guys what happens to your brain. And if you as an adult are not putting in the work to unpack that, you're going to perpetuate the toxicity in your relationships. And far too often there are men that don't want to unpack it because it's not masculine, or that don't want to talk through it, or whatever the case may be. So now guess what? They're repeating the cycle. And I've encountered far too many. I don't know about you guys. I've seen what childhood trauma does in a man that just lets it fester. I've been the victim of them. So, all of this to say that if you are a man and you are watching, I want to thank you for being here, but I also want to encourage you to continue watching. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Your mental health is important too. But more importantly, all of us have work to do as far as healing through whatever it is you need to heal through. Even if your trauma started as an adult, you went through a bad relationship. Like, you don't just get over those things. You have to put in the work. You have to sit back and think about, okay, this happened. How did this mess me up? And how am I going to combat that so I don't do it again? Like, it's all about growing. It's all about wanting to be better. And being a better person is not gender specific. Like, men can do the work too. Women can do the work too. And I have had some men reach out to me saying that they watch, and that they like my content and they appreciate it. And I love that because I feel like my content is so vulnerable and so open that a lot of men could benefit from hearing it. And I love the fact that I do have men in my audience that relate or, that understand or that are on a healing journey. I do love that. I love everyone that is, trying to work to be a better person, because a lot of people don't. And I'm sure that, you've all had your own experiences with people who are not trying to heal and be better. All of this to say, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I don't want to continue on this, ramble, rant. I feel like I can go on forever. But that's kind of like when I said I was going to pivot. I kind of am thinking about, I'm going to keep my story going. I know you guys are invested in the story, so I'm not gonna rip the rug out from under you, but the wheels are turning about maybe a spin-off show that I would do maybe bi-weekly. I would stick to doing this one weekly and that one bi-weekly, or vice versa, where I have people on and we have these kind of conversations about, whatever comes up. I mean, this is such a broad topic. We could talk about healing, relationships, toxic relationships. It just opens the door for so many different conversations. Abusive households, abusive parents, narcissistic parents, the list goes on and on of what we could talk about. So wheels are turning. If you want to come on, let me know. I'm going to need some guests if I am going to do that. So keep an eye out. I don't know. It's just kind of been in the back of my mind, because I feel like me reading the story is great. And I know that you guys are invested in my story, and I love that. But I feel like me reading off of a page kind of shuts my personality off almost. I'm pouring my heart out in the writings, of course. It comes out a little bit, but I'm saying, I would love to have these open conversations, with another person. And I think that you guys would probably enjoy that too. So drop in the comments what you think about that idea. Do you think that you would like that? Would it be more engaging? Do you want to come on? I don't know. So let me know your guys' thoughts around this episode. I'm sorry that I've been slacking on getting these boys out. I'm trying my best. Things have been crazy. Life has been crazy. I got a tooth pulled literally yesterday, and here I am behind the mic yapping my head off. So give me some grace. I love you guys. I appreciate your continued support. And like I said, let me know in the comments, number one, how you like this episode. Did we like the kind of getting into my relationships as a teenager? What's the vibes? Do we like the spinoff idea? And also keep a lookout for me in the news. Love you guys. Thank you. See you next time.